Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. And thank you to everybody for joining us here today. We are live across the internet on 12 different platforms. And thank you everybody who's joining us here to talk a little bit about digital advertising with our friend Rory McShane. We're going to be having him in the show today to really talk about what's on the horizon for Republican campaigns with dealing with all the digital platforms and all the changing landscape that we are seeing with big tech censorship and everything that's happening there. So stay tuned for that. And we really do appreciate you because we're really here to inspire and empower our fellow Americans to be the most effective citizens possible, as well as to be powerful political leaders for your community, for your state, and for our country. And we'd really love to have you join us over at politicaltradesecrets.com. Right now, you can sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets insider right there. Go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up, get exclusive stuff, and we really do appreciate everybody who joins us over there. Additionally, as I said, we're on 11 different platforms. And through the magic of the internet, right now, you can actually post a comment or a question. If you have any questions about digital advertising, if you have any questions about just how to be successful in politics, join us for this conversation today and get your questions answered. We really do love having you be a part of the conversation. And with that, it's that part of the show that's my favorite part of the show. I know your favorite part of the show as well. He's back from assignment, and he's going to be on the show with us today. It's the high priest of Ohio politics, the Buckeyes' best, your co-host and mine, Sean Bulldog Bartley. Sean, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to have you back, and you've been in the wilds of the country, and you've been on the ground in the campaign trenches, and we really do appreciate you being back.
Yeah, it's been great to be out there. When really getting to see some of this great stuff in practice, and it's been very exciting. That's why I'm looking forward to today's episode and conversation, because in some of these campaigns, we've had the great fortune of working with our guest today, and have really just gotten to see how important it is to have someone that's working with you hard, being responsive, and really paying attention to what's going on out there. Because one thing we're going to talk about today is in the digital medium, things change rapidly. And for those of us who've been watching us for a while, you've noticed that as well. That sometimes the internet allows things, and sometimes it doesn't, and without explanation, mind you.
That's exactly right. It is a ever changing, shifting sands. Really, this year in particular, and since 2020, of course, as well. As I mentioned before, we're on 11 different platforms, and as we often say, we are here to inspire and empower our fellow Americans to be the most effective citizens as possible, also the most powerful political leaders for their community. And there's a way for folks out there to help with that. So you can join the Share Force. So join the Share Force, help your fellow Americans and reignite American patriotism. It's really as simple as right there, wherever you're at, you can share the program, you can retweet it, and who knows who you might inspire to step up, to show up, to speak up in their local community and really be a part of making their community that much better. We've been watching parents across the country show up at school board meetings. Those parents are being political leaders for their community, for their kids, and for their state, and really for the country. So who knows who you might inspire to actually get involved in the political process if you share the program today. It's as simple as whatever platform you're on right now to just share the program, and we really do appreciate everybody who does that.
Yeah, and speaking of some of those things that we've seen bubbling up across the country, sometimes groups need to take it to the voters and actually have their issue make it onto the ballot to override some of these politicians who are just not listening out there to the constituents. So how do you do that? Well, you reach out to the experts at um, you reach out to the experts at Grassfire, and that's www.grassfire.us. And look, they do canvassing, petitioning, live calling. So what we're talking about here, this is really your ability to reach out to the voters and get their signature, and to be able to get your issue yourself onto the ballot. Nobody does it better in the business than Grassfire. So if it's on the doorstep, in front of the grocery store, or over the phone, it's www.grassfire.us. Make sure that you're getting that consultation, that free consultation today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Without further ado, I'd like to just set up this conversation that we're going to be having with Rory McShane of McShane LLC. He's the founder of that firm, and it's really had explosive growth over the last couple of years. And I think people are going to really appreciate his insight. One of the things that I think about Rory is that he's out there, he's hustling for his clients to really give them the best foot. I think we've talked about this. We'll ask him about this as well. They're a highly responsive firm, and a great partner if you're out there trying to run the best campaign possible. And just talk about his history and where he's what he's learned in politics. And I really do think that people are going to enjoy this conversation. Anything you want to say before we bring Rory on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you mentioned it with hustle, and that is something that we've seen out of Rory over the years, and I think with what they're doing now in the digital medium, it's really great. He's been described as a Republican strategist, political ninja, or political street fighter. This is I'm looking forward to a great conversation with Rory McShane.
Awesome. Here we go. Rory McShane, thank you for joining us today, and it's great to have you. We love working on campaigns with you, and we're really grateful that you're able to join us today on Political Secrets.
Absolutely, guys. Very excited to be on. I appreciate the invitation.
Excellent. Well, I get the sense that, like Sean and myself, you've gone the track that a lot of the old guys in politics have done, where you've worked all over the country. You've worked on campaigns, from the grassroots to the media side, which is what you're doing now. And you've probably done almost every job in the campaign, I'm going to guess, and you've done it all over the country, which is one of the best ways to learn. But how did you actually first get involved in politics?
That's Dustin. That's exactly right. I lived all over the country. I was chairman of the Maryland Teenage Republicans, and a state Senate campaign hired me and paid me $500 a month to be the field director. That's right, man. And then shortly thereafter, a Virginia House of Delegates campaign hired me and to do some door and to do some field, and I got a big raise to $1,000 a month.
Wow!
And
double your money. Stuff. That's great.
200% growth, man. Mm-hmm. And that was those were my first two paid campaigns.
Wow, cool. Well, that's so you grew up in Maryland. Tell us a little bit about where would you consider your hometown right now? Like that really has made you who you are today.
Sure. Well, look, I grew up in Maryland. I still have family there. I love it. It's funny being in DC as often as I am. I don't get a chance to go into Maryland as much as I'd like. But when I do get the opportunity to, it really means a lot to me. But I live in Austin, Texas now. I love being here. Spent a ton of time in Las Vegas. That's where our firm's biggest office is. I really can't put a pin on one place, right? I mean, I have lived all over the country. before starting my firm as a manager, I lived in Virginia, Indiana, Nevada, Texas, two or three different times. Colorado, Dustin, that's where you and I first crossed paths, was when I was living out in Denver. And, I've been all over and all over and all over. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, man. And I think it's given me a level of experience and vision and that you don't see a lot in this business. Dustin, you're a guy who's done it as well. Yep. And, I think there's something so lost when you see someone, get into this business who doesn't have that experience.
What is it about that experience exactly? Go ahead, Sean.
That was the same question I had. Yeah. So we're good.
So you see this, I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I get in trouble all the time. So you see all the time, right? A guy will come out of like one of the national committees, right? He'll come out of NRCC or RNC or whatever. He'll be in RPD or something, and then he'll get hired up by a firm and, so on and so forth. And that's fine. And a lot of those are good guys. But the problem is, their entire job on campaigns has been, how do I advise multi-million-dollar campaigns how to spend their multi-million dollars, right? Yes. And so they have no experience. And how do you take a B-level how do you take a guy who was served in the state legislature and has never raised more than $50,000 and make him into a multi-million-dollar congressional candidate, right? They've never done that. They have no frame of experience with it. So they're completely unequipped to give advice about it, right? They're completely and I deal with this all the time, right? A candidate will come to me and say, okay, I want to run. I'm going to put in $20,000, $30,000 of my own dollars, right? But after that, this rocket needs to take off, right? And some guy who's never been in that space is completely ill-equipped to advise it. And I always say, if you've never slept on the floor of a campaign office, you don't belong in this business. You don't belong calling yourself a consultant. And I'm fortunate; it's been a while since I've done that, quite a while. But
I've been in a couple of campaigns where we had sleeping rooms. Like we had the sleeping room. Yeah. Like it was, we had an air mattress in there, and that's where people went when they needed a couple hours of sleep.
I get it. That's exactly right. There's a couple of couches. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of folks up and down the ballot, we're going to have people who they're going to be able to really get people who are thinking about running or people who are running at the local level, and they've experienced a lot of this themselves, not having that budget and then having to go big time. And we have a candidate here, former candidate, Alexandria Knox. She says, Rory is a wonderful, inspiring man. He gave me lots of great advice when I was a candidate. So, keep the comments coming, and we appreciate the audience for participating. But, she was a candidate in New Hampshire at the local level, and those are very small races, and those folks need advice as well. And you're right, the people at the committees probably wouldn't be able to advise someone like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and even more to that point is that folks from that other point of view are more about either just saying no to that type of thing, like, that's not really where energy needs to be put, or just not being able to have what you described there, and that's really what, when you look down the ballot in particular, that's really where we get our field team for tomorrow. So I think really recognizing that is great. Now, you mentioned having been in, really been in all parts of a campaign. What had you decide to get into the digital space and digital advertising?
Sure, it kind of was a happenstance thing. I was, I managed campaigns for a long time. Was hired by Red Rock Strategies, which at the time was kind of one of the predominant firms in the Southwest. Mm-hmm. And I was overseeing their congressional races, and I kind of looked at digital, which I had some familiarity with, not a ton, and this was kind of in the infancy of digital, right? And I took the Facebook course, and I took the Google course, and I'm trying to remember the name of what the Google certification used to be called, and and I said, and I taught myself programmatic. And I went to the owner of the company and I said, I really think this is something we could do in-house. house. And I built the digital operation at their company, which is still going today. Built the mechanism for delivering reports, all that kind of stuff. And that's still in process today. And that ended up being somewhat successful. Then Vincent Harris, the owner and founder of Harris Media, which at the time was actually the largest Republican firm in the country. We had 55 people when that was unheard of, and that was 5 years ago. Today you've got, or 6 years ago, something like that. Today you've got a couple of the super firms, Axiom, FP1, that have more staff than that. But at that time, 50 people at a political firm was crazy.
Yeah.
So we had 55 people, 56 when I was there, and Vincent hired me and said, "Well, you're a guy who knows digital, and I want you to come run the political side of this business. I want you to run the digital for our political clients, and I also want you to bring a general consulting side into this business." And I did that, and I was with Vincent for a while and had a lot of fun there. Did some great work. Huge fan of the work they do at Harris Media, and then started my own firm in October of 2017. So coming up on 4 years ago, and since I'd kind of been known as Vincent's right-hand guy in the political space, a lot of people saw me as primarily a digital guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big part of our initial portfolio. I'd say now it's a part of it. It's not a huge part, but that was a big part of kind of what helped launch us as a company.
Cool. And what did you start learning when so you'd come from Harris and you started your own firm, and what did you learn from both all the campaigns you've managed? What did you take from managing all those campaigns to growing your own firm? And what are things that were kind of surprising as you started your really you've been in 2 cycles and you've had a lot of growth during those 2 cycles and a lot of success. And, that comes with its own challenges when you're having that kind of growth. I noticed you had an article on campaigns and elections about 6 questions to ask when you're hiring people. That's something that I'm guessing you have to deal with a lot because as we said when we started, both Sean and I have found that your firm is very responsive, and that takes people to be able to do that. So what are some of the challenges that you found as you started the firm, and how have you worked through that?
Sure, that's a great question. So I also have an article on campaigns and elections about some lessons for growing a firm, and that might be something interesting for your viewers to check out. Some of the biggest things I would say are is look, at the end of the day, this is a business, right? There's a great movie with Walter Matthau where he plays a trust fund baby, right? And he goes into his banker, and his banker is trying to explain to him that he's broke, right? And Walter Matthau doesn't comprehend it. And the banker's like, "You see, revenues here, they have to exceed expenses." Revenues, expenses, right? So we all do this because we love it. We all do it because we believe in what we're doing and because we want to elect people and we want to elect good people. But at the end of the day, it's a business, right? So what you're doing has to make business sense. And what I mean by that is really simple. You have to charge the appropriate amount for your services and your time and your staff services and your staff's time. I've gotten in that problem before where I really want to work on a campaign. So I'll make some, really low offer and get hired. And then my staff comes to me and says, "We're spending more time on the client who's paying us $2,000 a month than the client who's paying us $15,000 a month, Rory. This doesn't make sense." So that's one thing to consider. I mean, the second I would say is, believe in yours. I mean, the single biggest lesson I would communicate to anyone who starts their own firm is believe in yourself, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to get a lot of people who are very supportive, right? And that's an incredible thing. And there are some guys who have just had my back the whole way from the first day. In particular, Constantine Carrard in Arizona is a soulmate of mine. I mean, you guys, we've been working together since the very early days of the company, and people that I'm just absolutely grateful for that reason. But there's going to be some naysayers, right? And there's going to be some people who are not supportive, especially in a small business where there's only a couple hundred of us, and everything kind of circles around, And what I would tell people is, put your head down and keep working and keep trucking. And you know what I've found, and this has been the really interesting thing, the really successful guys in this business, the Jeff Rose, the John Brabenders, those guys have always been super supportive, right? Because they know how hard it is to grow and build a business. Yeah. And the two guys I just mentioned are guys that I always enjoy when our paths cross, and enjoy learning from them, and just two real scions of our industry. And the guys who are not supportive are the ones who feel that it should be them with the explosive business and not you. And, and those guys, you put your head down, you work really hard. And in 2 years, you say, I'll sit my bank account down next to yours and see who wins. And, but believe in yourself is the number one thing. Keep pushing, keep going. Don't take shit. From a tactical and management perspective, you have this fine line to walk where I've seen firms make mistakes on both sides, which is, one, they don't prepare for growth, right? So they're so focused on that profit margin that they don't have enough people, they don't have enough labor, resources, offices, utilities, so on and so forth, right? And then the others, so they're not delivering a good product to their client, right? And then the other side of that is they're too consumed with flash and fanciness and whatever, and they're spending too much money, and they don't have enough of a runway if the business were to go bad for a little bit. And the kind of the barometer I always try to use is, is this something that we need? Is this something that's helpful, or is this something that we want, right? Like, I travel a ton, right? I travel 120 days a year for business. I was in Florida. I was in the Atlantic Ocean 24 hours ago. 36 hours from now, I'll be in DC, then New York, then Las Vegas, then back here. So when I travel, my rule is always, not the cheapest hotel, the second cheapest hotel. That's where, I'm not trying to stay at the Motel 6, but I'll stay at, the suite.
Because you have to sustain it. You want to have some quality of life.
Right. That's exactly right. So that would be one of my biggest things. My second would be, I guess the next thing I would say to people looking to do that, start your own firm, is rhythm, right? It's like, you're not going to get rich on one big project, campaign, whatever, right? And if you do, you're going to lose it very quickly because you have no established repeatable skill, right? Like, you become successful by, okay, I wake up every day at X time. I answer email, then I do conference calls, then I do new client prospecting, then I return calls, whatever, right? And I'm going to repeat this process 6 days a week, boom, 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 boom. And that was quite frankly how we grew. And I remember, like, the first month where we grossed more than $20,000, I was super excited. And now if we have a month under 200 grand, I'm pretty upset, right? And and it just kind of, and you just grow it and you build it, and you trust, you bring in good people, you trust the people around you.
So that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of just that repetition, as you said, and discipline. What drives you to do that?
That's a good question. I mean, look, I'm a father, right? My son is definitely a huge part of it. I want to make sure that he has a comfortable life, and he has all the things that he could need and want, and so there's obviously that piece of it, right? There's just purely, I've been a poor man and I've been a rich man, and I choose rich, or well-to-do. I don't know if I'd say rich, but well-to-do. So there's that piece of it, but there's also who I am at my very core is I'm a competitive person, right? There comes a sad day in every high school football player's life when he realizes the NFL isn't going to happen. And, and I love competition. I love beating people. I love pitching against people. I love running campaigns against people. I love running campaigns against people and pissing the consultants on the other side off. And, I was at an event. I'm not going to share any names here. I was at an event the past couple of days, and there was a consultant from a competing firm, and it's all good guys, good firm, good company, but it's just always fun. Some of that ribbing you get to do, and I do it because I love it. I do it because until somebody wants to pay me to put on a football helmet, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. This is the way I get to be competitive and make money at it.
Well, you mentioned football. Where did this competitiveness come from? Is this something from when 4-year-old Rory, was he really competitive, or where did this come from? Do you think?
So that's a great question. Jordan Peterson calls it hyper type A personalities, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have always kind of had that. That's the way I've always been built, right? And sometimes it's it takes on different forms, right? Sometimes it's sports, right? And I was never a very good football player, but I was a hardworking football player, right? I was in the scouts, right? I was the youngest life scout in the troop, right? I was youngest senior patrol leader in the troop, or in the history of the troop. I've always been wired that way. I've always been, I'm the sort of person, if you put me on a deserted island with a hatchet and came back 3 days later, I'd have chopped down half the forest because I wouldn't know what else to do with myself. Right. So I don't know. You're only on this planet for so long. I'm going to drink in as much of it as I can.
That's great.
Well, I think that is a great philosophy. As you've been, you mentioned some names of people in the business, and one thing I wanted to ask is, who do you count as a few of your mentors?
Sure.
And what have you gotten from them?
Sure. One great question. Constantine Carrard in Arizona. I mentioned him earlier. He's definitely on the list. Not a huge business and a huge practice, but just such a wonderfully decent human being and a great guy, and a great husband and father, and a friend, a true friend. I actually get to see him in a couple of weeks here. So he's definitely on that list. He's been a friend for a long time. I would say, Vincent Harris is certainly on that list. Ryan Irwin. Jeff Rowe, I've had a great friendship with Jeff Rowe and gotten to go to him for, some counsel at different times and how to handle different situations. And, there were some articles that, I'm going to move on from that. What do we name the firm and what's your advice on this? So super busy guy, but has always made time to chat and spend some time on the phone and be helpful, and always very grateful for that. And here's what I'll say: the overwhelming, it's easy to get cynical in this business, but the overwhelming majority of people I've asked for help, I would say by a 70-30 margin, have been more than happy to help. Right, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah. Would you say that's the biggest takeaway that you've gotten from their mentorship, is that willingness to help?
That's definitely a part of it. And each one of them has their own style, right? Each one of them has their own, each one of them has their own style and their own lessons and their own, and I go to them for each one of them for different things, right? If I need to know how to manage a huge growing firm with a lot of employees, and we've got like 14 full-time people right now, Jeff is the guy to go to. Nobody manages more people in this business than him. If I need, hey, something about, a different topic, I might go somewhere else, but each one of them kind of has their own specialty, I guess I'd say.
Yeah. We've talked about the next generation and building the bench with candidates. And something that I know that you do is you do a lot of the Leadership Institute courses across the country. You're talking to people who are the next generation of campaign managers. There's a lot of folks who watch this program who are like that. Two questions I have about those folks. One, what is it that they're most interested in learning when they show up? And then, and this might be the same thing, it might be totally different. What is the one thing that if you just were able to leave them with one thing from when they're with you that you want them to take away from your teaching?
And this is the young operatives or the young candidates?
Yeah, well, whichever one. I mean, you probably do both kind of classes, but yeah, take them both on.
Sure. I mean, the young operatives, more than anything, what I want them to walk away with is, you will never be the smartest person in the room, right? Or the smartest person out there. You're never going to be the most well-connected person out there. What you can control is being the hardest working person out there. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be someone who's smarter than you. There's always going to be someone who is better connected than you, but you can personally make sure you are the hardest working person out there. The candidates, the biggest thing I want them to take away is what you think helps you win office, what all of the local activists around you helps you win office does not help you win office. Yeah. Right. I mean, I am convinced that more candidates kill their campaigns by going to these activist events than anything else, right? That if you are not raising dollars or talking to targeted voters, that does not mean people at the Republican Ladies Club, you are wasting your time.
Yeah.
Amen. I guess. Sorry, I was.
No, it's great advice. We actually put in our budgets sometimes a line for what we call political graft, which is local parties asking you to show up and pay for their luncheon.
Sponsor my table. That's exactly right. Look, here's
because you fight it constantly, but you're going to still get a certain percentage of it that's going to show up.
What I always say is you have to go to those events once a year, right? You have to make a trip to each. You have to go to each club one time a year, right? And then you come back next year, right? But I mean, the amount of candidates who they go from Republican Ladies Club to county party meeting to state party meeting to Republican Liberty Club to Republican Toastmasters Club to and it's the same people at every single one. It's the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that we really focus on is, where the energy is, and so when we look at the digital space and we look at what's been going on, we really see that the energy is with you. We've talked about growth and other things like that. We kind of look at this. Transitioning over to the digital space and the digital terrain here, in a world where, an ever growing the big tech control and censorship, how can candidates break through and avoid getting shut down?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I mean, the short answer is you have to plan your calendar and prepare for it to happen, right? Yeah. You have to assume that your ad is going to take twice as long to launch as a liberal ad, an ad on the other side. You have to assume that your ad's going to get rejected. You have to have all of your your verifications, your advertising verifications locked away and in place, because if something happens 3 days before the election, it's not going to get changed. It's not going to get better. So really, planning is the answer to that question.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I know, and we've kind of seen it all through the years here. You had the moratorium on ads and
Facebook the last week. I mean, how did you guys deal with that in 2020? So much of Republican campaigns, their avenues started getting cut off.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky that we were able to file for a couple exemptions, and we did get some. I mean, we spend a lot of money on Facebook, and we have a very good relationship there. Now that's not to say any ad we wanted to run or anything like that, but a couple specific exemptions, like for the Georgia elections, we were doing some ads there. We were able to be exempt on that. But again, planning, right? So we had to go to our clients and say, okay, Facebook is no longer an option. I mean, we had a lot of special elections this last year. Texas, a state Senate special in Texas. We were involved in the Georgia runoffs. We had a special in state house special in Texas. We had the lieutenant governor's race in Virginia. We were successful there in the primary ballot initiative in San Antonio, Texas. We were also successful there, one of the biggest ballot initiatives in the country. So we had to go to our clients and say, okay, this is not an option. Therefore, we suggest moving money into display or OTT or some other alternative means to achieve our goal.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. So where do you see the how important is it to be agile
Incredibly. I mean, that is the digital business, right? The digital business is the ability to be agile. Nothing matters more than that. I really think, in my opinion. And I remember when I was at Harris Media, one of our clients was now Congressman Ralph Norman, South Carolina 5. If you've ever seen, the show with Kevin Spacey where he plays the congressman in DC. What am I thinking of here, guys?
House of Cards, yes.
House of Cards, thank you. If you've ever seen House of Cards,
from basically that area.
He is from that. It's the Peachoid district. I think one of the so anyways, we're coming into the runoff. I fly out to South Carolina to spend a couple days with the campaign, and we were so agile on digital. I mean, every day we were getting back a list of undecided voters from the field team. So we were running ads to them with Congressman or not, and then State Representative Norman saying, "Hey, Ralph Norman here. I heard you talk to one of my volunteers today. You're still undecided. Please call me on my cell phone. Here's the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right, whatever." And every single day we were doing stuff like that, and we won that by 249 votes. It was the closest election that year. Yeah. So I think stuff like that is just super, super important.
Yeah. Well, we've seen a lot of stuff in the last 2 cycles with algorithms change. You have policies change at these different platforms. You have even, this, whatever is true or not, but, texting, potentially the DNC is trying to have things censored there. Like there's so many of these different changes that are happening when it comes to algorithms in particular and actually being seen, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do in politics is have our candidates be seen and have their message heard. How do you actually deal with that? Algorithms pretty much decide what we see. How can an actual human being actually impact that these days?
Sure. So, I mean, we've got to, and this is, look, I haven't personally placed an ad in 2 years, right? And or probably longer than that, probably almost 4, 3. And the reason I say that is because if I'm the guy who's, running the company and bringing in the new clients and placing the ads and doing all of these things, right? My energies is not focused enough on the ads to pick up on and to see these small changes, right? Yeah. So our full-time digital team is like 6 people right now who they don't do client strategy, they don't do business development, they don't do anything but helping our clients win on digital, right? So they are plugged up enough into that world to come back and say, okay, Rory, we're having bad deliverability on this platform, but if we change speed and we go over here, or if we cut our length of video, if we do X, Y, and Z little trick, right, we can pick up another 5%, 4%, whatever. And I'm so grateful that we have that level of insight into the algorithms and into what's going on, so we can bring that to bear for our clients.
Yeah, and I think that's important. So, a couple things I'm hearing here is, somebody that really has the specialization and having that at your disposal is really something that is critical, particularly when you're dealing with an area that is unregulated and then seemingly heavily regulated all at the same time.
Right. No, that's exactly right. It's kind of like it's always the build a better mousetrap thing, right? Like, we're gonna try and get the cheese out, and then Facebook's gonna build a better mousetrap, and so on and so forth.
Yep. Yeah, it's mind-boggling, honestly. And I would think for a local campaign in particular, this is one, they probably, what we just talked about, people don't even know that this is a challenge that they're going to run up against. And what is it that Republicans, from congressional to even the people who are putting together presidential campaigns down to local level of politics, what is it that they're not even aware of right now that they need to be aware of, or the people they hire need to be aware of, that's on the horizon when it comes to the digital sphere?
Sure. I mean, my assumption is that texting is only going to be, that we're going to see some interruptions in texting and a lot more. Texting is kind of in the wild, wild west of our industry right now, and I think we're going to see some changes coming to that front, right? I'm always nervous about, one day Facebook just wakes up and says no more political ads, right? or even worse, no more political ads for conservatives, right? But there's just so many new mediums developing so quickly that none of the things I remember. One of the last things I did while I was still at Harris Media is I went down to Arizona and I taught a class for a bunch of candidates on basically how to run your own ads, because Arizona is super small, super underfunded races, right?
Yeah.
Like your average state house race in Arizona is like $40,000 maybe if you run what's called clean public finance. And I don't think anything I gave in that presentation is still applicable or accurate today. Wow. Right? 4 short years later. And that's not true of television ads, right? Like you've placed TV ads the same way for 40 years, right? That's not true of radio or, and look, some new advances have come into monitoring the effectiveness of television and stuff like that. But I mean, Facebook, you really have to be in the thick every single day to really, truly be able to advise and do this effectively.
Yeah. So with all of that, is people are going in 2022, they're going into 2024. What are the keys to getting attention online?
Sure. So I'm going to say something I'm going to push back on that statement, and here's why. I don't think attention online matters, right? Okay. Or I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but I think there's become this misnomer that the way that you win is to become an online celebrity, right?
Is it seen? What would be the way you would describe it?
You need to be seen by the people who matter, which are donors and voters in your district, right? Yeah. But, we all saw Kim Klacik and, so many of these. And I like Kim and she did a great job and everything. Joe Collins, like all these people. I mean, Dan Rodheimer in Texas, right? And I like Big Dan too. I think he's a good guy. But, had all these people who had a bajillion views online, right? Mm-hmm. But you're passing the same content around an echo chamber. Right? Yeah. Like conservative online engagers are not the people who vote in regular elections. And what I want to help candidates do is I want to help them get their content in front of people who vote, not just social media activists. Right. Yeah. So I think one of the key things to do is explain to candidates that like going viral, there's a lot of people who go viral. One, going viral is extremely rare. Two, even if you do go viral, there's a ton of people who go viral and never win, right? We all remember arguably, I think the first viral video in politics was Dale Peterson for Alabama Ag Commish, right? If anyone remembers that ad where he's like cocking the 30-30, right? Great ad. The guy came in like 4th place. I don't know who any of the other candidates for Alabama Ag Commish were. I don't know who I spent some time in Alabama. I love Alabama. I don't know who
the Ag Commissioner is.
I have no idea who the Alabama Agriculture Commissioner is. Yeah. Not a clue, but I know Dale Peterson, and Dale Peterson finished nowhere near top in that race.
Absolutely. So what's the key to having the right people see your message and donors seeing your message?
Put as much lead on as few targets as humanly possible. Everything should be targeted, 1-to-1 matched, right? You really should not deliver. Somebody called me yesterday and asked me about YouTube, right? Putting ads on YouTube. And I always say, I'd rather you spend stupid money with me than stupid money anywhere else. But I would not spend a dime on YouTube, right? Because your targeting options are very, very minimal. So as much lead on as few targets as humanly possible.
Now, I have a quote here from a live video that you did a few years back, and I thought it was great. And you're specifically being asked about the new Instagram Live, and that was the big thing. It was the new shiny object, and you said, in addition to and not and instead of a tactic, and that's how you talked about it. There's all these different new shiny objects. There's all these different tactics. Yep. Now, the digital space is very prone to that because it's the build the better mousetrap. There's always these things. How do people? Well, say a little bit more about that.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, what fundamentally wins a campaign? dollars and doors, dollars and doors, dollars and doors, right?
Yeah.
And everything we do here is to reinforce what happens when the state legislator knocks on your door and the person opening the door says, "Oh, I know you. I saw your video on my phone. You're the one who's going to lower taxes," or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so many and so many candidates try to avoid the hard work of campaigning. Like, this is hard. I spend more time talking people out of running for office than into running for office, right? Like, I always say, like, if you're not prepared to lose $100,000 in your own investment to your campaign, or just in money you've not earned because you've been working on your campaign, right? If you're not prepared to make yourself into a telemarketer for 2 years, don't run. Right. So many people try to avoid the hard work of campaigning by doing other stuff, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. That is a great point. That of really, we have the same conversations about what it takes to run for office. In fact, we encourage people to reach out to us to talk about what it takes, and the conversation.
We're not going to talk you into running either.
No, no. But it is really like, no kidding, this is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get into it and they really see that that's what it is, then that's when they actually make the decision. Okay, am I in this to win it and do this, or am I in it to, make a point or whatever it is?
Yep.
And when they see that, that's when it's really shines there. You were mentioned earlier, getting as much lead on the fewest amount of targets as possible, and you talked about 1-to-1 match. So for our audience out there, what are like 1-to-1 match, or what are match rates, and why do they matter?
So, especially in a Republican primary, a municipal election, a special election, you're going to have, a very limited amount of voters, right? I mean, you're looking at, like, we just did this election in San Antonio, right? And it's a municipal election, right? So we targeted habitual municipal voters, and then we tried to push up turnout among likely supporters a little bit, right? And we had a very good analytical model that helped us do that. But and we deal with the client all the time. Well, I haven't seen any of these ads. Well, how many of the last city council election, of the last 5 city council elections, how many have you voted in?
Mm-hmm.
None. Well, there you go. Right. Like, if you're seeing those ads, I'm not doing a good job.
Yeah.
And every mobile display, IP address match, OTT, Facebook, Instagram, those are all platforms wherein we can match individual voters based on the voters' information, and where we can run ads to individual voters. And that's the way a modern campaign needs to be running ads.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so what can and match rates are clearly important, because it's getting to who you say are the important ones to reach. So what can campaigns do to improve? Well, first, what are we seeing in match rates? And then what can campaigns do to improve those match rates?
Sure. So, you definitely don't match on Facebook what you used to, right? And we're seeing that kind of across the board. I mean, you used to pretty reliably be able to say we were going to get 80% matches on Facebook, and we're just not seeing that anymore. We're still seeing good matches in mobile device ID, in IP address match. We're starting to see match rates increase in OTT as more families use Hulu, Sling, products like that, so on and so forth. The biggest thing you can do to increase your match rates is invest in data, right? Invest in data. If you have a gender, a birthday, a home address, an email, and a cell phone number, that's going to give me a lot better chance to match than John Smith who lives on Cherry Street, right? So, that's the best thing that can be done there.
Very, very good. Very good. And then, one thing we talked about coming in, transitioning to this part of the conversation, is that, you really have a responsive agency. And so what does it take to have a responsive agency? So, what's been the keys there?
Sure. Well, I appreciate you saying that, and that's what we go for. And I say to every single person I interview, if you are here for the salary, you leave. You are in the wrong job, right? And don't get me wrong, we have some people at our company who make a lot of money, but it's because they've been here for a while and they've been a big part of the growth of the company. So they make bonuses and stuff like that as a part of the company's performance. And some of those guys make like multiple six figures, right, as a part of the company's overall performance. If your goal is to just, okay, what's the best salary I can get for the least amount of hours worked, you are in the wrong business. Because, I think I can confidently say right now, everyone who's working for us is a workaholic, right? And we say that in the beginning, we're like, hey, Rory, I probably work about 75 hours a week. I'd say probably our laziest quote unquote employee is probably around 60 hours a week, right? Like, if you don't love if you don't love this, right? If this is, and this is the same thing I say to people who want to get into politics. If you don't love this business, this is not for you, because in politics, you spend the first 10 years of your career making basically no money. Right. And similarly at our company, right? Like, if you work hard and you get promoted through the ladder, you're going to have some real opportunities to make good money. But, this, at first, it has to be a love of what we do and a love of working here. And if you don't have that, don't. I try and set the tone for it. I try to never take longer than 24 hours to respond to an email, to return a phone call, try to be available for my clients, within reason as much as I can. And, and I just think that, I think that comes through in the work product we provide to our clients.
Yeah. So when somebody's out there, we have people who are both, potential campaign managers watching. We have people who are potential candidates watching, people who are also elected officials. What do they need to be thinking about and asking when they hire a digital media vendor? They're looking for any of their consultants, honestly, but specifically on digital, like what do they need to be asking? What are the questions they need to be asking? How do they need to vet it, as opposed to this guy told me to talk to these people?
Sure. So there needs to be a very clear understanding of what you're buying, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so if I hire this company, is there a specific amount of social media you're going to do for me? Is there a limit to the social media you're going to do for me? We have that all the time, right? Where we have a specific amount in our contracts of how many emails we're going to do, social media posts, so on and so forth. And we say to our clients, like, hey, we can be kind of your on-call unlimited social media people, but that's a different price than, the state representative from rural Arizona who just wants to keep up his social media presence and wants us to do a couple posts a week just so he's posting on social media, right? It's a very different thing. So there needs to be a very clear understanding of what you're buying and what you're paying for. There should be very clear understanding of reporting, right? Like how often will reports be received in social media, in advertising, so on and so forth, who your point of contact is going to be, right? I am very honest with my clients that, most often I'm not going to be your point of contact, right? I mean, unless you're spending, unless you are a U.S. Senate race, a gubernatorial race, I am not your point of contact. We're still going to talk pretty, somewhat regularly. You guys and I we're working together on a campaign now, and I'm not your main point of contact, but I'd say, Sean, you and I probably still talk maybe 2-3 times a week, something like that. But who's going to be your point of contact? What's that person's background? What's their level of experience? Are they, is this a person who's really very qualified, or is this some 2-year associate out of college who, really doesn't know much about digital? And, so those are all very important questions to ask.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Rory. And if people want to work with McShane LLC, what do they need to do, and where can they find out more about you, more about the company, more about the kind of stuff that you're up to?
Sure. McShaneLLC.com. You can shoot me an email, Rory, RORY, at McShaneLLC.com. Social media, we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So find us any of those places.
All right. Rory McShane, McShane LLC. Thank you very much. It was great having you on the show.
Thanks, guys. Rory. I really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Well, that was a lot of fun. It was great having
Absolutely.
him, and we still have his information there. If you want to go to McShaneLLC.com, do check that out. And Sean, what are some of the things that you were really surprised to learn during that conversation?
I was really struck. Well, we talk about systems a lot. We talk about planning a lot on this show, and it was another theme here as well.
Yeah.
So if you didn't take anything else away from that, and then really the idea of how important specialization is. And how that's worked for his firm, and what makes a difference there. That was a good reminder that as we kind of get into some of these things, when you're hiring people to do your thinking digital advertising, you want people who are experts in it around there, and it doesn't have to be that everybody in the company is an expert in that, because there's a lot of other things in a company that happen. But
And
but
I
it,
also got they have multiple people, and what we
yes,
also already know is that they each specialize a little bit, even within the digital space, within specific areas. Because one of the things I got from it too is that you have to be in it on a day to day basis, and we all experience this. Probably even just you as a viewer, you experience this when you open up your app and it's completely different than it was yesterday. Like these
exactly.
things are changing at breakneck speed, and you have to have people who actually know what's coming, or if it changes without anybody knowing how to deal with it.
Well, that's a good point. And they don't ever, when you mentioned for the user side of things, when your app changes completely, they don't ever say, "Oh, hey, by the way, this is going to change. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's how it's better for you."
Hmm.
They don't ever do that. They just say, "Oh, yeah, here."
But people who are on top of it in the digital space, they will have their ear to the ground, and sometimes they do know in advance this is a big change coming or something like that.
Yeah.
It really does make a difference. The systems, that's a really great insight that you brought up. It's actually predictable. I would actually say that with the growth that they've experienced, it's 100% was going to be true that they have to have systems in place.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's impossible to sustain. And we also know that systems, they create performance
Hmm.
ultimately, which is one of our big themes. We're going to be posting this over there at politicaltradesecrets.com. Do be sure to sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets Insider while you're there. Get exclusive stuff. You'll get this. And then, we talked about this with Rory. He has a number of articles that are at campaigns and elections. And there's a couple of them that are in particular my favorites. And I'm going to text those out later today. And if you'd like to be part of our texting community, this is a great place. We talked about texting. Having people in your own texting community is a great way to make sure that you're actually able to get your message to people, and that service providers aren't going to be able to shut you down. So if you text me at 202-918-3345, you can actually see how a candidate could use texting to be able to keep their donors in touch with them. You can just watch how we do that. We send out the program every day as we go live, so you can get a link to it. But we send out the resources later in the day from the show. So I'll send out a couple of the articles that he referenced today. If you text me at 202-918-3345, again, that's 202-918-3345. And for the people on the podcast, 202-918-3345. Since you don't get to see that beautiful graphic, you need to hear it a third time. So with that, we'll be sending that out later today. And that makes me think of one of those breakthrough tactics that you can use. This is the time to be using it. There will be changes coming, I'm sure, as Rory said. But if you want to have great partners for the best quality and at the best price, texting, go to 10centtexting.com for one-to-one political campaign texting. You can launch your message today. It is going to be the best quality, the best price, because they allow for rich media, that MMS, the ability to send even your 30-second TV commercial or sending a GIF, which, you can show pretty much everything you'd have on a direct mail piece, but it gets to be responsive. So if you want to watch how we use texting, text me at 202-918-3345, and then go to 10centtexting.com to actually launch your own campaign and to actually text directly those voters that are going to vote and need to hear your message. Sean.
Absolutely. Well, I think that is a great reminder, and it is a great tactic that that if you're using it well, will work well for you.
Hmm.
And if you aren't, you already know what the text campaigns that look like that aren't doing it
They're
well.
terrible. Yes.
You either go, "Oh, I've never seen them," or they infuriate you so much that you've seen them.
Hmm.
So those are those are the options there. I also want to mention the work we do at olsonstrategies.com. Reach out to us. We mentioned this a little earlier. Are you thinking about running for office? Maybe you want to know how to be the most powerful political leader in your neck of the woods, maybe on the project that you're most concerned about, the issue that you care about the most. We can have that conversation with you and really get down to what is going to make the difference for you. How do you do that? Visit us at olsonstrategies.com. That's OLSON strategies.com. You can email me at Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or email Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. Again, we'd love to have that conversation with you about what it takes to really be successful. And part of it is some of the partnerships that we work on with other campaigns for all the services that you're going to need, and working with some of the professionals like Rory to do just that. So
Yeah,
let's have
tapping
that
into some
conversation.
brilliant minds like Rory and so many people that are on the program. We have a great group of folks that you can win because you have a great group of people who are supporting you.
Yeah,
And one of the things we just talked about is we call it our campaign performance system. We will begin to build the systems around your campaign and around you or your project that will have your vision become reality.
yeah,
The doing of it every day, the actions that will actually make a difference are going to be in place, and they're going to be running such that more opportunities occur for your vision to become reality. It is really amazing to watch. It's almost like watching magic happen once it's in place, and cool things do happen when that those systems are in place. Well, thank you for sharing that, Sean, and thank you for your insights today as we were walking through digital advertising, really how to take the bull by the horns. That's it's not a coincidence that we called it "Take the Bull by the Horns" in digital
yeah,
advertising. I do believe that the McShane LLC motto is "Take it by the horns." So
yeah.
they really do, and they bring the hustle to everything, and really do appreciate them. Appreciate Rory being on the show today. Appreciate your insights. Any last thoughts that you have?
I just want to thank Rory for being here. I want to thank all the people listening, watching, commenting, and I know people were involved in a lot of different platforms, so really appreciate that. And I just want to thank you for Dustin for what you brought to the show today, and I think some of the questions that our viewers have been asking on this topic, and so being able to do that was really great. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, and appreciate everybody watching and for all the comments. If we didn't make it to your comments during the live program, we will get to those. You can either text us and we'll be able to answer those questions, or we will follow up on the platform that you posted it. As well as if you're watching this on the recording, we always pop in there and we follow up with people's questions as well. So thank you very much for your engagement. Thank you very much for being willing to step up, to speak up, to show up in your community, in your state, and for our country, because ultimately together, what we're here and what we're about is reigniting American patriotism for all of our fellow citizens, because this is a great country and it takes great people stepping up, working in politics, and also leading in politics. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter.